Space Time Smackdown releases today, and chances are you're watching this video post release and asking yourself, okay, I pulled all these lovely and beautiful cards. Like, oh my god, have you seen how precious this full art Drifloon is? Or how absolutely metal Spiritomb is? The point is, you have all these cards, you want to build a deck, so now what? Well, mark today as your lucky day, as I have 10, that's right, count them, 10 decks for you, focusing on all the new cards we have gotten so far. And without further ado, here are 10 decks to try in Space Time Smackdown. Let's start us off with the cover legendaries. We have Dialga. Dialga for 2 metal energies. You can take 2 metal energy from your energy zone and attach it to one of your bench Pokemon. The most important thing to note with this ability is that it does not specify that you must run metal Pokemon. And I ran through the list of all of the Pokemon that you can really run. There's a lot of really good ones. I thought to keep things simple. Like I think Heatran's really good. Like Registeel's really good as well. Uh, I decided let's keep it simple, right? Let's use just the really strong EXs so that we can take advantage of Mars. Right, Mars is the new kind of red card on crack reset shuffle. If you're familiar with TCG, your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws a card for each of their remaining points needed to win. This means that if they take a single KO throughout this fight on one of your main Pokemon, you can Mars them to 1 card, and that is insane, right? So a lot of your battle will be either leading Mew in the active, and charging up a Dialga so that you can budding Expeditioner out the Mew, and put Dialga to the front. And the main card you want to obviously charge up is this Yanmega. Yanmega is a 120 damage dealer for 3 colorless. You're going to see this card in a lot of different decks. But I think specifically it's really good with Dialga. We're using Pokemon Communication because this deck is so reliant on Dialga. If you do not have Dialga in your opening hand, I think that's going to be one of the rough parts. But otherwise, this deck has all that you want in a deck. Very high HP stats, mostly all basics, a way to deny points with Budding Expedition or Mew, and just really consistent damage, right? You're dealing 120 by turn 4 if you're going second, or turn 5, right, if you're going first. And you just have a lot of ways to find this Dialga, whether through Pokeball, through Pokemon Communication, through Professor's Research. Lots of really cool things. This deck is running Sabrina as opposed to Cyrus, as this deck does not really have ways to spread damage. It does have Metallic Turbo, right, which is going to deal 30 and mark that for Cyrus. But for this deck, for the sake of consistency, Sabrina will be used. We can't talk about Dialga without immediately going into Palkia. I think it's a Pokemon that everyone saw in the leaks and was immediately kind of disappointed. They saw Dimensional Storm, it did 150, that's a scary nuke, but it's discarding 3 energy, and that's just a really high requirement. And at the time, we had only known Misty, right? Misty is to choose one of your water Pokemon, flip a coin, and just attach, right? And you can snowball, but most times you'll probably be getting tails, right? 50% of the time, you'll probably be doing nothing. So a lot of people were concerned about its consistency, and enter Manaphy. Manaphy gets to choose 2 bench Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, take a water energy from your energy zone and attach it to that Pokemon. I think the most impressive part of this card is that it kind of solves that energy problem. I think Misty made it so that it's very hard to have consistent energy giving to water, and this one is consistent. However, you must have 2 bench Pokemon. This move will fail if you don't have 2 bench Pokemon, so keep that in mind. But still, this combo will be deadly. I'm using Palkia and Articuno, as they both have different energy intervals to attack. Palkia is 1 and 4, Articuno is 2 and 3, and how the combo goes, because you can actually deal 150 damage on turn 1. So let me explain this combo. If I'll probably throw on visualizer so that you can see it. But turn 2, have Manaphy on board. You must have Palkia and Eevee on the bench. You Oceanic Gift them, right? And then turn 4, this is 3 energies now, right? One on Manaphy, one on Palkia, one on Eevee. You evolve Eevee to Vaporeon. You leaf out to Palkia. You attach an energy. That's 2 energy on Palkia. You wash out the energy on Manaphy and Vaporeon. That's 4 energy on Palkia. You are attacking for 150 turn 4. That's devastating. That has to be broken in my mind. And of course, if you don't get Leaf, right? Oh no, worst case scenario, by turn 6 of just attaching to Palkia, you'll be able to attack, right? You don't get your EVs, you don't get anything, right? It's just Manaphy Palkia. With a little bit of like Manaphy not getting attacked, your Palkia can have 3 energy attached to it by turn 6, 4 energy actually, because first turn Manaphy, second turn you attach to this, and it'll be fully charged. I think it's really insane. And of course, if you don't have Leaf, right, and you have Articuno, you do that same combo I just mentioned, uh, where you attach to Articuno and Eevee, evolve Eevee to Vaporeon, retreat the Manaphy, and then attach to Articuno. That's 2 energies attached to Articuno. Vaporeon washes out. You're dealing 80. You can deal 40 too, obviously, but 80 is the big one. This deck has really high snowball potential. I'm using Cyrus because this deck has Dimensional Storm and Blizzard, and both of these will deal bench damage, which means you can choose a bench target and just kind of swing for game. Mars is cool, especially because you have a lot of prize control in this deck. And also, like, it's one of the best disrupting tools that we now have. And of course, Misty, because, like, if you snowball, like, why not, right? Like, who doesn't want to end the game on turn 1 because you flip 4 heads or 3 heads or something goofy? Moving along, we have Darkrai, the next legendary EX. I think that Darkrai EX is interesting. You know, dark types, I think one of the things holding them back was the lack of a strong basic, a lack of a Pokemon you actually want to attach energy to. And they gave you a Pokemon that you literally want to attach energy to. Whenever you attach a dark energy from your energy zone to this Pokemon, do 20 damage to your opponent's active. That's a lot of damage, right? It's going to add up. This deck is like Cyrus's poster child. Cyrus is going to be switching in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon that has damage to the active, right? And how are we going to achieve that? We're going to have this new Spiritomb. Spiritomb, for 1 colorless, this attack deals 10 to each of your opponent's Pokemon. That's a lot of damage that's going to be spread. And the cherry on top is this Weavile, which for 1 energy deals 30 plus 40. And you might wonder, like, how can I set this up, right? There's actually a very cool combo with Dawn. So Dawn moves an energy from one of your bench Pokemon to your active. Let's say you're going first, right? You put Sneasler, you put Darkrai, right? That's your opening hand. Turn 3, you get to evolve and attach. You evolve, attach to Weavile. You attach an energy to Darkrai. Darkrai does 20 to your opponent's active. Then you Dawn that energy to Weavile. That is a 90 damage first hit of the game. That's scary, right? That's all I'm saying. When we see our first Pokemon tool of the video, this one is to give a Pokemon 20 HP. Both of these Pokemon have 140 HP, so getting to the 160 like safe zone is kind of cool, especially when you're playing against Gyarados decks. You're playing against Palkia, Mewtwo, even though I think this deck destroys Mewtwo. Very cool to have, very neat to note. I think that this deck can work with Weezings as well. I think this deck can work without Spiritomb if you want another Pokemon communication, right? So, very excited. I think this deck is instantly one of the best decks in the format. Excited to see what people do with it. Moving along away from the legendaries, let's talk about the new Shaymin. Shaymin reads, once during your turn, you may heal 10 damage from each of your Pokemon. We have seen this ability previously. I've played these games before, right? If we look at Butterfree, who had a very similar ability. Once during your turn, you may heal 20 from each of your Pokemon. What was the problem with Butterfree is that it was a stage 2. In order to run this with whatever deck you wanted to run it in, you would need to get to it, and it's very long. It was very inconsistent. And now we have a basic that does almost the same thing, less healing, but obviously it's going to scale if you can get it early. And this is kind of what Venusaur was missing. That's right, we're going back to Genetic Apex. Venusaur, I think one of the things that set it back was kind of consistency, right? Searching for it, and it didn't really have a good partner. And now I think it does with Shaymin and Pokemon Communication. Pokemon Communication is going to be a way to search out when you have extra cards in hand that you don't need your Ivysaur, your Venusaur. I think I didn't really talk about that too much in the last few decks that had Pokemon Communication. Pokemon Communication is going to be a consistency card. I think every deck that is running a stage 2 wants Pokemon Communication. Any deck that's running a stage 1 can consider Pokemon Communication. I'm currently running a one executor line. So let's say I draw the executor, and I have this extra executor EX in my hand. What can I do with it? Well, I can Pokemon Communication it. Obviously, Pokemon Communication is a -1, but getting to your Venusaur, getting to your Ivysaur, getting to your Shaymin is going to be so much value. Very cool deck. Obviously, Erica, if you're running grass decks, I think that Venusaur EX is going to be really, really strong, especially with Shaymin. At the very least, way more playable than what it was previously. It's time for fighting. I think that this is a card that we saw in the leaks. It's attack that you basically, for every Lucario on the bench or in play, plus 20. So you can get plus 40 maximum because there's obviously a 2-card deck limit. You run 2 Lucarios, you run Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, Marshadow. You guys are probably already familiar with how Marshadow, Hitmonlee works. A lot of people had Farfetch'd in this slot, but now with Lucario boosting fighting damage, I think that we are going to start seeing Hitmonchans back. This deck is another deck that loves Cyrus because of Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee is no longer a bad lead when you can pre-plan Cyruses, right? You can Hitmonlee something, and then eventually with Lucarios get to like a plus 70 Hitmonchan, right? Or a plus 50 Hitmonchan, or even a plus 80 Lucario. Lots of cool routes that this deck can take. And then other than that, it's just using very standard cards, Giovanni for extra damage, because all of these cards are relatively low damage. I think the other combo I failed to neglect or neglected to mention is Marshadow plus Lucario, right? The thing is that with 2 Lucarios, that's plus 40. With a Marshadow, that will be 140 damage, right? With Giovanni, that's enough to even KO Mewtwo. Of course, I think that Marshadow is going to be a prime target to get Cyrus now, but still very strong combo. I would see this like pretty much as a very entry level build, and Lucario decks can go honestly anyway. Speaking of the many ways that you can run Lucario, there's Rampardos, right? Rampardos is very interesting. It's a 2-stager fossil type with 1 energy, deal 130. That's a lot of damage. 150 with 1 Lucario, 170 with 2 Lucario. Cranidos is also just good. 70 with a Lucario, 90 with two Lucarios, right? Just a really, really good card. When you're using fossils, one of the cool things is that you can control your basics, which means you're more likely to see Ryulus, you're more likely to see Hitmonlee, and you're more likely to see that Marshadow, right? Of course, like I said, when you're running stage 2s, you want to run Pokemon Communication to be able to find it. Cyrus is still really good. Less needed when you're one-shotting everything with Rampardos. If you can find a way, I think, to fit another Rampardos in this deck, I think that will be strong. I should mention that a lot of these decks are decks I believe in, but there's a lot of ways to build and make this deck your own. Like maybe Marshadows are no longer needed when you're dealing freaking 130 off the rip, right? Like maybe we can do something like this. and add that second Rampardos to the deck list, right? And I think that would be viable. Um, I don't talk about like Gallade yet in this video, but I think that Gallade is another mon that would love to be supported when it's like has like relatively low base damage, but like you want to see it, right? Energized Blade doing 70 plus, and that's just going to be an additional 20 when you're using Lucarios. So excited to see what people do with Lucario. Pachirisu is a card I had to think long and hard about before recording this, mostly because I needed to find ways for it to be better than Pikachu. And one of the ways I found a way for it to be better than Pikachu is when you want a lightning deck with like 6 or less basics. And this is an example of a lightning deck that you want to run with 6 or less basics. This deck uses Pachirisu and Zapdos as your main damage sponges, oopsie. And then you have this Luxray, which discards all lightning energy and deals 120. Really, really cool, really, really damaging. It's 120 to any opponent. It's Pokemon, so it includes the bench. Uh, just very, very scary stuff. If you're unfamiliar with Volkner chooses Electivire Luxray for this purpose. Luxray attaches to lightning energy, so you can start off Pachirisu. Pachirisu can deal like 80, or you can even start Zapdos. Zapdos gets charged, right, and eventually starts doing Thunderous Hurricanes. And when they finally faint, you have this Luxray capable of dealing 120, right? These grab from the discard pile. What that means is that you are able to, after Pokemon faints, like a Pachirisu or Zapdos, just grab them, attach a Luxray that's 3 energies in 1 turn, and deal 120 where you please. Giant Cape is there for longevity. I can see Rocky Helmet, as Rocky Helmet will put Pokemon in range for Luxray. But lots of cool things. I've already stressed the importance of Pokemon communication, and Sabrina is just good stall as the main pieces. Zapdos and Patchy don't really deal bench damage, and if you're dealing bench damage with Luxray, you're trying to end the game. Next up, we have Infernape EX. It's a little bit crazy how we did not get to a Terra EX or Empoleon EX, but we did get Infernape. Maybe they're going to save those for a mini set, but that are neither here nor there. Let's talk about this Infernape. For 2 energy, you can discard all fire energy from this Pokemon and just chunk something, nuke something even, right? I think it's really, really cool. Of course, like you see this and you're like, oh, that's like kind of underwhelming, right? It's only 140, it's a stage 2. But then you look at its retreat cost, and it's a 0 retreat cost Pokemon, which means that after nuking, you can get out of dodge, charge up another Mon, right? I think it's really, really cool. You're riding the Chimchar line, and Moltres is just always good in any fire deck to start adding fire energy. Moltres has a new synergy, so if you're not necessarily interested in Infernape, but you love your Charizard, you love your Arcanine, Moltres has a new synergy with Dawn. So if Moltres on turn 1 or whenever you attack flips a singular heads, by the next attack you attach to Moltres, that's 2 energy, Dawn the benched energy onto Moltres, and you're able to fire off Heat Blast at literally as early as turn 2. That's insane value. One of the better decks to run Dawn. I ran Giant's Cape because I would like to have Moltres and Pokemon like Arcanine over the like Arcanine just for extra HP value, and you can avoid ties by attaching Giant Cape to it. Giant Cape to Moltres so that you can live Mewtwo attacks. But really, looking at Giant Cape also on Infernape allows you to live Palkia, which may or may not be like a threat, but these are usually tech slots. I can easily see Giovanni. I can easily see pretty much any other card. I can see the Pokemon communication. I can even see you drop the Growlithe line entirely, right? And just start stacking items, start stacking Pokemon comms, start stacking Giovanni's. So yeah, really cool deck. Excited to see Fire be taken in a new direction. But expect a lot of this to work in Charizard. Of course, I would have to talk about Cynthia in a video like this. Cynthia is a very interesting card. During this turn, attacks used by Garchomp and Togekiss do plus 50 to your opponent's active. Really, really solid damage. To the point where it's like, yeah, I want something like this in my deck, right? Togekiss feels okay as a double psychic energy. I think it might be good in like a Miss Magius build. But I don't know if it's necessarily too great. But for Garchomp, only requires 2 energy, right? It's water fighting, deals 100, with Cynthia dealing 150. One of the cool parts that separates Garchomp from Togekiss does not have an ability, is that you must discard a card from your hand in order to use the ability. When you do that, you could draw a card. So this means that you can get closer to your Cynthias, closer to your nuke buttons, and that's really neat, right? And of course, this deck is using a classic Kangaskhan. Kangaskhan, when it has an energy attached, colorless energy, you deal 30 to 60, 0 to 60, pray for 30. And I think that's just kind of cool that you can like already threaten damage while you're setting up a Garchomp to start dealing 150 everywhere. I think that this deck is going to be a deck that evolves a lot. I think Garchomp's design is interesting. I think Garchomp is good. The fact that it's a water fighting means that you can fit it in like existing fighting decks. You can fit it into a water deck. I can see like Palkia Garchomp be a real deck. Palkia Manaphy Garchomp to say, and so it's kind of interesting where we like see Garchomp. I think that this is going to be a mon that has a lot of deck building potential if you're someone that likes to cook. I can see you do really good with this. Other than that, just like Pokemon Communications, Pokeball Professor Research, because you're playing a stage 2, you want to get to Garchomp as quickly as possible. Slash is like a very solid damaging move on Gabite. If you are on curve, like you led the Gibble, and you are able to go like second attack, attach. Uh, but like all of that, the ability of being able to search through Cynthia's is so good. Garchomp is really sick with it. Uh, that's really all I have to say about it. Hope that it gets. Hope that someone cooks. I think that I gave you a kind of entry level deck to this, and there's so much building potential, right? Like there's a bunch of one ofs that in this deck that you can use, and you can make tech cards, right? Obviously, I put Giant's Cape because I want to be hitting that 160 threshold. But let me know what you guys cook with it. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about another older deck, Mewtwo Guardy. Guardy has better prevos now in the form of Ralts, which now switches Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon, and a Curlia that can attack for 1 energy. The other Curlia was a 2 energy attacker, which is kind of awkward. You normally would not get there, so just kind of neat to have. But Mewtwo has new tools. New tools. Right? You have Pokemon communication. You can swap out and potentially get Gardevoir Curlia faster. But the real stars, I'd have to say, is this Giratina, where if this Pokemon has any energy attached to it, it has no retreat cost. That means that this Pokemon is an amazing sponge. You can play it turn 1, and eventually, while you're like charging up a Mewtwo, you can attach an energy via Gardevoir, and it's already able to retreat. It's able to deal 70. It's like damage is nothing to scoff at either. And just a really amazing HP benchmark. I will say, Giratina has use in other decks. It is notably if this Pokemon has any energy attached. So excited to see what people do. And another star of the show is Azelf. Azelf is like Psychic Hitmonlee, a weaker Hitmonlee, but it's pretty neat, right? Its attack does 20 to any Pokemon, not just the bench. So a stronger Hitmonlee in certain regards, right? And what you're going to use this for is to set up Cyrus's late game. Mewtwo becomes a game of turtling usually, and if you can Azelf a bench Pokemon, and get them in and then deal a 150 side drive, that can be game. Specifically the Gyarados matchup, right? You can now Azelf hit Gyarados, get Gyarados in, say, hey, remember last expansion when you would have a like 70-30 matchup into me? No more. That ends today. Mewtwo has a lot of new ways to build. I've even looked at like a version that drops everything and just like tries to turbo out Mewtwo. I think Mew still has space in this deck where if you don't want to run Giratina or if you want to like drop a Pokemon communication. So excited to see where this deck goes. Uh, Mewtwo is just a mainstay in Pokemon Pocket. So I thought, like, hey, if you're already building a Mewtwo deck, right, or you already have a Mewtwo deck, here's how potential way to upgrade that Mewtwo deck. And there you have it. That's 10 decks. Obviously, there are cards I missed, like Gallade and Miss Magius. And I didn't want to like misrepresent them. Or, like, I didn't want to like build like a half chop deck. So I will be thinking more about those and probably putting those as shorts following this video. What cards are you interested in? I think there were so many cards I didn't even like talk about. Like I think that's metal. Like there's a million and one ways to build Dialga. Whether you're running Melmetal, whether you're running Bastiodon, whether you're running uh Registeel and Heatrans. So very excited where a lot of people take these decks. I will be playing in competitive tournaments all weekend, all weekend. You can find me at twitch.tv/soulserve. Um, Other than that, I'm happy. I'm excited. As you can see, I built 10 decks and edited this video really quickly for you guys. So um, yeah, yeah, I'm happy. That's it. That's this. The video's ending now. Bye bye.